What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. First off, I want to apologize. It has been over a month since the last video, kind of where we started up talking about the 6.4 Hemi swap, and I know a lot of you guys were super excited. As you can tell, the factory Jeep engine is still in here, and there's a few reasons for that. So I want to kind of explain what's been going on before we start this video, where hopefully we can get the 6.4 Hemi inside of the Jeep. Now, most of you guys know that Cassie and I have been working on an LS swap as well. So sneak peek, the LS 5.3 is inside Cassie's Jeep. Everything is mounted. As you can tell, wiring is still a complete mess, but we got it to the point where we could pull it out of the garage. So if you're looking for updates on that, check out Cassie's channel. It's going very smooth and will hopefully be wrapped up very soon. Now, the big issue or the holdback, it's almost impossible to do two V8 swaps at once. Yes, we do have a big garage. Sadly, we both have full-time jobs, and this YouTube thing is not our full-time job. So a V8 swap definitely does take a while. You see people on Instagram or YouTube and it gets done in a week. Guys, don't set unrealistic goals. Yes, you can do it at home by yourself. You can save a lot of money, but it is still a pretty difficult task that does take up a lot of time. But it is time to start this up. Not this engine, but start up the project. The first thing we need to do is to get this old engine out of the Jeep. This is not, at least the first part of this, is not gonna be a how-to. If you plan on doing a V8 swap at home, you should know how to pull your old engine out. So pretty much we have to disconnect everything, our transfer case, our drive shafts. We have to pull our front bumper off, our front grille. Everything pretty much attached to the engine and transmission has to go. Let's take a look at what finally came in. This guy, you remember me talking about this? That goes between the transmission and the engine. This took like 3 weeks to ship, and it has a slight little bend right there, so that's awesome. We'll try to fix that. But we also got our new wiring harness and a bunch of other goodies from Jeep Speed Shop, which we'll check out here in a little bit. Plus, we have the engine, we've already talked about all that stuff, and the transmission is over there behind the JK. So hopefully in this video, the goal is to get this entire setup, everything out of the Jeep, and hopefully, possibly, maybe, get the new Hemi mounted inside the Jeep. So we will see, how plans go. Let's get started. We gotta take everything off this Jeep and yank it out of there. Oh. Removing this front grille support, radiator support, there are a ton of wires. Compared to the LJ, where there's like 3 wires you have to unplug and you can pull the grille and everything, the JK is a different story. So we had to unplug all of these wires. This is just for the driver's side. And then all of these for the passenger side. This harness routes through this grille support over to that side. So we had to unplug them, route it through the radiator support, whatever you want to call it, and then pull it out. This thing unbolts pretty simply. There's 2 bolts up here, and then there's these guys on each side that actually come from the back into this. So total of 8 bolts, unplug it all, this comes off. We also went ahead, not we, it's just me, went ahead and removed the skid plate, air box, all of that stuff, and set it to the side. We're gonna keep a lot of this stuff for the Hemi swap, so definitely don't throw it away. I'm gonna grab a bin later at Walmart. Bin, not me, storage bin, B-I-N, and put everything in that. So all of this off, we're able to get into the engine, we'll be able to loosen the motor mounts and everything, start disconnecting all of this stuff. But there's one recommendation that I would make to you guys before you do an engine swap. That's to pressure wash not only the engine bay, but also underneath. So just removing the skid plate, like look at all that dirt under there just falling on me. So it's too late now. It is a pain in the butt getting this Jeep in there, but definitely clean your engine bay and clean underneath your Jeep before you start this. We're getting really close to being able to pull the old engine out of the Jeep. We have the transfer case out. We have the old catalytic converter and Y pipe, part of the exhaust out. Now, there is one thing I do want to mention. A while back, I did the Barnes 4-wheel drive DIY 3-link. Great system, and I'd still highly recommend it to any of you guys. But there is one thing you have to realize when you do long arms that incorporate to the transmission cross member down here. So they mount right here. on the support for our transmission. Whenever we need to, lower our transmission, if we're, doing a clutch job or just pulling the engine, we have to pull this piece out. Now, since our control arms are attached to it, they're gonna be dangling right here. So we have to drop these in order to drop that. So have a jack here supporting our pinion on our axle so it doesn't flip around. I think it's finally time to get ready to pull the engine. Everything that I've been able to get to is disconnected, and we're good to go. I've loosened the motor mount bolts. The good thing about the JKs, they don't have like a bolt through design. The motor mounts on the frame actually have little U's in them, so it just slides down in it. So you loosen the bolt and it should come right up free. So at this point, I'm gonna hook up some chains to the exhaust manifolds or anywhere else I can bolt on the engine and get this hoist and hopefully get this engine out of here. So we got our handy dandy engine leveler. Get that out of there. We're probably hidden on all kinds of stuff, but who knows? All right, oh, there is one. Power steering line. Control arm again. All right. Well, it definitely seems like it's free at this point. We'll be back. I'm going to disconnect all of this stuff on the back of the engine. The work does not stop here. I'm gonna have to really clean the engine bay. Let me grab the camera real quick. Gotta really clean it up in here. Engine came out really easily. Nothing broke. There were a bunch of electrical stuff on the back side of the engine that I had to disconnect, as you can tell, all throughout here. So what I'm gonna do next is kind of go through all of this and see what I need to keep and what I need to get rid of. Then once again, really start cleaning, because this, like, look at that. That's gunk right there, and I am disgusting right now. I spent last night cleaning up the engine bay as best as I could. So you can tell it's still pretty dirty, but it's clean enough. The only way to actually really clean this would be to pull it outside and pressure wash it, but I'd say this is pretty good. So what else did I do last night? Well, I took the power steering reservoir off because our new Hemi already has one, and I kind of just moved a little bit of things around. I did remove my ARB air compressor because that's not gonna fit, sadly, with the Hemi, and then I did take off the rest of the engine wiring harness. So pretty much every plug from your computer. Oh, and I took off the factory Jeep computer. So there's only one left, and that is like the body harness, the white one. So we're gonna leave that, but all the other ones that ran along here, pull those out and get rid of them, because that's gonna come with our new wiring harness. We're gonna talk about that in a little bit. But with everything out of the Jeep, it's time to start doing a few things to the Hemi itself. Now, what I'm doing here is gonna be the same for a 5.7 Hemi or the 6.4. You guys know that from my last video, like, the only reason I have the 6.4 is because I got an incredible deal on it. If I was to do it over again without this deal, I would do a 5.7, and it still makes a lot of power, and it's a little more budget friendly. So everything I'm talking about, 5.7, 6.4, pretty much the exact same thing when it comes to this swap. So there's a bunch of stuff we're gonna have to change. It's not exactly just drop in, bolt in. So let's take a look at the engine. So this is 6.4, has the little covers that say 6.4 Hemi on it. I took that off because we're gonna have to change out the wiring harness, but there's also a few other things we have to change. So exhaust manifolds, as you can tell right here, these are not the SRT headers. The headers are a lot bigger than this, but sadly they don't work with these bolt-in engine mounts. So these came with the engine when I picked it up for a steal. They're the bolt-in engine mounts, very similar to the Jeep Speed Shop motor mounts, which is nice because we just bolt them in. We don't have to cut our factory ones off, weld new ones in. These are just gonna bolt right in place. And a lot of people run these with really good luck. You don't have to worry about the frame welds blowing out or anything. But the only bad thing about these is your header selection is very limited. So you can see there's not much room under there for big headers. So even though this is a 6.4, I have to run 5.7 liter headers. So these are the factory Grand Cherokee, I think the WK headers. So they are pretty small. I'm pretty sure we're probably gonna lose about 20 horsepower right there. Just, not only, they're not even factory 6.4 headers, they're factory 5.7 headers. So in the future, I might try to find like maybe a set of aftermarket headers for a 5.7 that would fit, because that would bring it back closer to the stock 6.4. Not really sure, but these, they work, and at least we'll have something to get it into the Jeep. So Jeep Speed Shop does sell their own set of headers, but I think it's like $1,000, and that's not really too budget friendly, but who knows, maybe it's an upgrade for down the road. So back to what I was talking about. So the first thing we're gonna change, we have to change stuff on the engine and the Jeep, but the first thing we're gonna take a look at is this oil filter. This is the, it's where our oil filter would screw right on, and it has an oil cooler. So our coolant goes through here and cools the oil, which is great. Sadly, on a Jeep swap, this filter where it sits right here would smash our front axle. So we have to run a relocation bracket. This is going to replace this big thing and angle our oil filter 45 degrees. I'll have the part number in the video description, but there's that. We get this and our bolts down there. So what we're gonna do is remove this guy. 12mm Allen up inside here, take it off and replace it with this. Now that we have our new oil filter bracket on, as you can tell, mounts it really nice, tucked up in there at a 45-degree angle. That means we are gonna have to get rid of all the factory coolant hoses, the lower and upper. Well, there's actually not an upper on here, but this guy right here, this is what goes to our oil cooler down there. We're gonna have to get rid of that. And then it's time to go ahead and remove the entire wiring harness. So the wiring harness on here now, at first I thought it would work with the Jeep, but this is actually for the Dodge Charger or Challenger that came from the factory with this 6.4. So we're gonna remove all of the hoses and the engine wiring harness to get prepped for our new Jeep wiring harness. Now that we have everything off of the engine, it's time to take a quick look at the transmission. So in my last video, I mentioned that we are going with the 8-speed transmission from a Dodge Ram. This is something that most other V8 swap Hemi specialists aren't doing yet, especially for the JKs. You know, they're sticking with the 545 or the NAG 1 for the 2012 and up Jeeps. You know, a 5-speed transmission is awesome, but the 8-speed is a complete game changer. So Jeep Speed Shop is making this possible by offering their 8-speed kit. We're gonna talk later about what all goes into that, but it's pretty much its own standalone computer. We have to use a floor shifter from a Dodge Charger or Challenger, and there's a few other tweaks we're gonna have to do. But the first thing, before we bolt this on the engine, we have to get rid of this. This is the transmission cooler and heater assembly. What this does is regulate the transmission temperature to keep it right at a perfect temperature. It's nice, but it's not completely needed. We can't use it on our Jeep swap because, as you can tell, this is the driver's side. Our drive shaft comes right along here and would whack this whenever we start flexing and articulating. So we're gonna have to remove this and modify our transmission to fit some transmission cooling lines, because this transmission has 4 lines that go to heater or cooler. So we're gonna go ahead and break this off and get our drill and tap ready. Actually, we don't have to drill, we just have to tap the holes. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's get this off. A little heavy. Bought this used on eBay, 8-speed auto, 39,000 miles. So definitely pretty new for one of these 8-speed transmissions. So now that we have that assembly off, let's take a look and see how we're gonna modify this transmission for our standard cooler lines. That is what these 2 holes here are for. So as you can tell, this entire assembly, it has 4 ports on top, but ultimately 2 ports down on the bottom. So what we're gonna do is tap these to 3/8. Let me grab the tap. I do not want to tell anybody the wrong thing. Right here, picked up on Amazon. It is 3/4 16. There we go. So 3/4 16, we are good to go. So what we're gonna do is grab our tap here. We're gonna have to block off the insides of those ports so we don't get metal shavings inside of our transmission. But pretty much we're gonna tap this nice and evenly. This is a step that if you've never used a tap before, take this to a machine shop or somebody who knows how to use a tap to tap and drill, or just to tap these out to thread them. What we're gonna use are those 2 black ports up here, which happen to be 3/4 16, and we're gonna attach both of those inside of our new threaded holes. Use a little bit of sealant so they don't leak, and this is what we're gonna be able to hook our transmission lines up to. Boom, let's knock that out. Got the first port tapped. As you can tell, it went pretty smoothly. This is an aluminum case, so it is easy to tap. Definitely keep your tap lubricated with some oil, and even with the port in there, there was some metal shavings left behind. The easiest way I found to get them out was with the port in there, get some oil on your finger and just wipe it out, and the shavings will stick to your finger with the oil on it. So with that being said, it's time to tap the second one, and halfway through I realized that, man, I should probably plug this bottom one while we're tapping up here. Everything went good, but now it's time to talk about your two options for transmission lines. Once these are tapped at 3/4/16, we can either install these that we took off of our cooler housing and use the factory Grand Cherokee cooler lines. I'll throw a part number for those in the video description. I think they're like 140 bucks. Or you can kind of do it yourself, and sorry, neighbors out there watching. Or you can do it yourself and run AN fittings. So what an AN fitting is, an Army Navy fitting, you can read up on them, but it's a really easy do-it-yourself kind of transmission or fuel line for stuff like this, and it's like a soft line. So all you do is get a 3/4/16 AN fitting, either an 8 or 6 AN fitting. I'll throw that info in the video description so you guys can check it out. And that would be, you kind of make your own transmission coolant lines. It's a little easier to route, and it's on the cheaper side. So when it comes to Hemi swaps, what I do want to say is that most people love using all of Mopar part numbers. And that's the great thing of a Hemi swap, is that pretty much everything we're gonna need, none of it's aftermarket, it is all Mopar direct part numbers. The bad thing about that is if you start doing that and buying all these Mopar parts, transmission cooling lines, fuel line, all that stuff, the price goes up substantially. So for example, if we are going to use the factory transmission cooling lines from a Grand Cherokee, great, we have the Mopar part number, it's 140 bucks. Or we can just use an AN fitting and do it for like 40 bucks. You see what I'm saying? So that's up to you, but you know, in the past, most Hemi swaps have all been Mopar part numbers, Mopar stuff. Definitely makes it easier though. Sadly, I've already bought the Grand Cherokee transmission lines. I don't know if I'll use them. Maybe I'll show you guys how to do a soft AN line. We'll see. But I'm going to continue tapping this bottom one, and then it's time, before we bolt this, we do have to make a few modifications back here to install our Jeep transfer case. One quick tip before we move on to the second half of what we need to do the 8-speed. When you're tightening down our fittings, don't crank them down really tight. It's an aluminum case, and I'm pretty sure these are steel right here. So if you suck them in too much, you could possibly crack it. Nice and snug, and don't forget the RTV is really gonna help seal it up. But with those installed, it's time to move on to the back half. There's a few mods we have to do to make this work with our Jeep transfer case. First one is our bracket. So we have our transmission shift bracket that normally bolted right here on our old transmission. Now on the Ram transmission, as you can see, there's interference right here. So what we're gonna have to do is just create a little cut and just notch this out so this can slide in. That's gonna be needed for any swap, whether you're using an Atlas or a Sport transfer case or a Rubicon. But the part down here, for you Rubicon guys, we're gonna have to cut this entire bottom section off and this ear over here for our transfer case to clear. Sport guys, it's gonna bolt right up. So we're gonna make these two modifications and test fit our Rubicon transfer case. Now that we've test fit the transfer case, we are good to go. This is only needed for your Rubicon guys. Now, in my last video, I mentioned that some transfer cases will not work with the 8-speed. So here we have the output of the 8-speed, which is a male. Over here on my transfer case, it's a female. That means it's good to go. So what transfer case will not work with an 8-speed transmission? That's gonna be the 2012 and up automatic transfer cases. Whether it's a Sport or a Rubicon, the 2012 up autos have a big male input on the transfer case, and that's not gonna work on that. You know, it doesn't matter what you identify as, a male output is not gonna go into a male input. Sorry guys. Don't thumbs down me for that. You know it's funny. All right, so this is good. So pretty much if you have a manual transmission any year of Jeep, it's gonna work. If you have an 07 to 11 automatic trans, it'll work too. Sorry, 012 and up guys, 12 and up guys, if it's automatic, you're gonna have to swap it out. And does it matter if you use a Sport or a Rubicon with the 8-speed? Not really. The Sport T case is still gonna be fine because this 8-speed is a super low gear ratio. With the Rubicon case, it might be too much. We will find out. But with this done, we are done with the transmission. That is it, guys. The factory torque converter in here is good for the 5.7 and the 6.4, so there's nothing we need to mess with in there. So the next step is just bolting this up to the engine. Now, I mentioned earlier that I've been waiting on this part, and it is this little bell housing cover. I forget what they call it. I really don't know. But if you're using the 8-speed, you need to get this dust cover, or I forget, I don't know. I'll throw a link in the video description to what this is, but it needs to be for the 5.7 Dodge Ram. You know, the one that we got this transmission from. So now that we have this, we're gonna slap that in and install this onto our Hemi and then start working on the wiring harness. The goal is to get this in tonight. We're gonna make it happen. It is coming together, guys. So got the transmission mounted, got the torque converter bolts all torqued down. As you can tell, I also have the starter on. So real quick tip about the starter, it is also from a Ram, same year as the transmission or the same ranges of years. Got this on eBay, it was used, low miles, tested it, it works, so that's awesome. Torque down those bolts, we are good to go. Now the last thing is this, the little plate thingy, brace goes between the lower half of the engine and transmission. There's two different ones. The correct one, I mean, it depends on what transmission you use, but my videos, everything's based on the 5.7 or 6.4 and the 8-speed. This is the one we need. Here's the part number 53021491AA. The other one almost is pretty much identical, but as you can tell, this one has a taller lip compared to this one. So just depends on what transmission you are using. I think that one might work with the NAG one, the 5-speed transmission. I think that, because that's what, when I bought this setup from the guy, that's what he included with that one. But I got this one, we're good to go. So what this does, there's a special torque procedure. We're gonna have to look that up, but it shouldn't be anything crazy. But just goes up in here and bolts everything up. Nice. So we're gonna torque that down. And then tonight, I think the game plan is to possibly start working on the wiring harness. So I haven't talked about it much, but it is the wiring harness from Jeep Speed Shop. So it is pricey, very pricey, but the good thing is that it's practically plug and play. We hook up this wiring harness, we mount our computer, the new computer also from Jeep Speed Shop, but hasn't come in yet. We're gonna talk about that. But you just hook it up, and I think there's 2 wires. There's like 2 wires for the engine side that we have to like wire in, and that's insane. The rest is just plug and play compared to the LS swap where there's a lot more wires we have to do. So I'm not gonna talk too much about the harness install. You kind of start with one known spot. So like over here on the alternator, and then the harness is just laid out to work on the engine. Now, when we're lowering this bad boy into the Jeep, I am probably gonna remove the intake manifold because this is going to be a very, very tight fit. And there are still some modifications we have to do inside the Jeep engine bay. I'm not sure if we're gonna have to pound in this firewall yet. We'll see when we do a test fit, but there's two big things that have to be done for this Hemi to fit. The first one is our steering. So we have our intermediate shaft that comes through the firewall right there. We actually, it's like, as you can already tell, I already have it disconnected. But it's normally like right here, and that's gonna hit the head of the Hemi. The Hemi head's gonna hit that. So we have to modify this hole right here, and Jeep Speed Shop sells a bracket that kind of cants it over, moves it this way just a smidge, and it's gonna clear the Hemi. So, I mean, it's not too hard to install. I'll show you how. Let me just go ahead and show you the bracket. So here's the upper intermediate shaft that connects to the steering wheel. There's the thing that bolts to the firewall. And here is our new bracket. So normally bolts with those two stud cutouts, and we have a new stud welded in order to clock it. So that's awesome, gonna make it easy. Getting up in there is a pain, especially if you have the factory amplifier right there in the way, but you can do it. Just pop the cover off, get in there. Now on the newer Jeeps, 2012 and up, the studs for that are on the outside or on the engine bay, so it's a lot easier to get to. You just bolt it up right there on the outside. We are gonna have to trim that opening a little bit bigger. I'll show you that here in a minute. Now the second thing, is going to be the battery box. So a lot of people buy the steel replacement battery box. And the battery box, see this whole plastic thing that runs along here? Holds your battery, it holds your TIP'em or your fuse box, and it also holds the factory fuse box or the factory air intake. Now all of that, as you can tell, it sticks out pretty far. The Hemi is really wide, it's gonna hit right there. So the go-to option for most people is to buy a steel battery box or battery tray, and it kind of relocates everything, turns the battery sideways or long ways like this, like the newer style Jeeps, especially for us 3.8 owners. So that is gonna get in the way. I'm gonna try to make it budget friendly. I'm gonna try to chop this section off. So like starting here, down and over, I'm gonna try to chop it off and see if that fits. If not, we're gonna have to fork out the cash for a new steel battery tray. But we're gonna try to keep, you know, little sections like this, try to keep it budget friendly if we can. This video is running long, I know it, but there's a lot to talk about, guys. I'm not sorry for it at all. A few other things to talk, you know, since we're talking here, don't start fast forwarding. The oil pan. So luckily when I bought this engine, it already had a lot of upgrades to it in order to run it in a JK. So the factory 392 Hemi comes with a front sump oil pan. So pretty much this is the sump. It's normally up here and then it tapers back. Clearly that's not gonna work in a Jeep because we have a big old axle under there. So if you do this swap, you're gonna have to get a rear sump oil pan steel. I think there's a kit for it. It just comes with everything. The new pickup tube, all that. Depending on your front drive accessories, hopefully if you get a used engine, it comes with everything that you need. If not, this stuff can cost a lot of money. But pretty much everything is very, very simple up here. The one thing that's kind of unique in the Jeep swaps is gonna be this AC compressor. So the one you wanna get, actually, let me just go ahead and, I don't know if this is the right part number. MC447280-9490. I don't know. But you're looking for an AC compressor that only has one connector. So this one connector up here, some of them have a second plug in the back somewhere over here, and those aren't compatible. So there is another modification. So suppose you get the right one, you have to modify this bracket right here. The previous owner of this engine already did that. So I think normally this is a big section of metal. You have to cut it along here and chop it up here and put a new bolt in. So you see that right there. I think that's just for clearance issues or something. We will find out when we put it in there. But that is that. Everything else is pretty standard, you know. There's really nothing to change up there. So I think that's gonna be it, guys. So tonight I'm gonna work on getting the intake off, the wire and harness on, and then that stuff. I'll film a little bit of it, but hopefully when we're back, it'll be time to test fit the engine. So thanks for watching, guys. I know some of this can be a little hard to stick through and watch. Trust me, it's a little hard to stay out here and talk about all this in the garage when I know that if I didn't have to film it, this would already be in the Jeep and we'd be cruising. All right, guys, last night got some work done, some more forward progress. Let's talk about what we did. So I got the steering relocation bracket installed. Should have done it before and after, but as you can tell, it is really close to our brake booster over here, which means it scooted it over out of the way. The best way to grind that is gonna be using a die grinder and some good metal bits. I actually picked up a set from not Home Depot, Harbor Freight. These were quite expensive, around 50 bucks, but these things ate through the metal, no problem at all. I also went ahead and removed the battery tray. I figured the best way to kind of modify it would be when the engine is in the Jeep, so I can see what all we need to do and if it'll even work. Now, I was gonna install the wiring harness, but I figured we need to do a mock-up. Before we install that expensive wiring harness and possibly damage it test fitting this engine, I wanna test fit it with nothing on there just to make sure I don't have any clearance issues. Now, before we mock it up, there is one more thing we have to do. So these are the heater core lines that run to the water pump. On the 6.4, they both come over here to the driver's side and they stick up pretty high. The issue with that is it's gonna smack our firewall. What most people do is swap to the 5.7 lines. They're a little shorter down here and they each come off their own side. I'll insert a picture right there. That's 100 bucks. Personally, I'm just gonna modify these to make them work. So what I'm gonna do is just pop these off out of there. There's little O-rings in there that hold them in. And I'm just gonna chop them right here and then modify our factory Jeep heater hoses in order to route up to the heater core on our firewall. So let's rip these off, chop them with the grinding wheel, mount them back up, and mock up this engine. And like a glove, the Hemi is inside the Jeep. There's actually more room than I thought there would be. As you can tell, I mean, we still have the intake manifold on, but that's gonna put it up to about here. Honestly, I thought this was gonna be a lot more crowded. Everyone's like, oh, you gotta take the body off. Not really, it actually installed pretty easily. You know, for clearance wise, our steering, we have plenty of room now that we've moved that over. Pretty much everywhere. Looking over here at the oil filter, that is gonna be, I mean, I don't know what to figure a way out to you know, change our oil because we have this cross member right here in the way, but I mean, it has to be possible. People do it. The only place where there's like very small amounts of clearance is right here between our AC compressor and the our power steering, or the gearbox right there. It is really close. I'm gonna have to move my hydraulic assist line because as you can tell, it's rubbing the AC compressor, but that is no big deal. Over here for the alternator, we have plenty of room. Everything on the lower side definitely is tight, but it definitely fits. It fits for sure. There's more room than I thought there's gonna be. So I think we're gonna end this video because the next part is the wiring harness. I don't know if I'm gonna try to do it with the engine in the Jeep or yank it back out, install our Jeep Speed Shop wiring harness right there. And then, you know, we still have to figure out the transmission mounts. We got some plates from Jeep Speed Shop there, but the engine is in the Jeep and it looks pretty good. So the next video, we're gonna continue on wiring harness, mount the transmission and all of that stuff, but everything's going along good. It's kind of crazy. We got 2 V8 swaps going on. Cassie's video will be dropping soon. This thing's looking good. It is still a rat's nest of wiring. I think she's actually gonna change it up. So we were gonna use a standalone computer that we got on eBay, but turns out I think we're gonna use the Holley Terminex Holley Terminator X kit. It's a phenomenal kit. She'll tell you about that in her videos. But that is it for this video, guys. Please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned. I think so far the Hemi swap's a lot easier than the LS. It's kind of just, you know, drop in, especially with the motor mounts, the bolt-in motor mounts, everything. It's going to be a very easy wiring job, and it really just fits in there really nice. So I will see you guys later. That is it for this video. Thanks for watching. Peace.